is anything.
And it is Stephanie White talking about Caitlin Clark being brought up in a lot of these conversations in CBA by other people and not her speaking herself. And I think this is a really interesting one. And it's clear from this answer, I've already listened to this, it's very clear from this answer that Stephanie White clearly and Caitlin Clark, there's clearly a level of person, like they clearly really like each other as people.
A coach's loyalty is one of the most sacred things in sports, but what happens when that coach finally breaks their silence and exposes a truth the league has been trying to bury for months? Indiana Fever's Stephanie White just did exactly that, and her words have blown the lid off, a scandal hiding in plain sight. After a season of staying quiet, she finally said what fans have been screaming, and it seems the entire WNBA is now unnoticed. This wasn't just a defense of her player, it was a declaration of war against the powers that be.
Stepping up to the plate, saying what it is. These people are using Caitlin Clark. They're disrespecting, and we can't allow.
The interview was full of explosive moments, but it was one single word that sent shockwaves through the entire sports world: pawn. White declared that her star player, Caitlin Clark, has become a pawn in a game she never even signed up. That one word perfectly captured the dark reality of Clark's rookie season, a reality where her talent is being used, abused, and exploited by the very league that should be protecting her. It was a stunning admission that everything fans suspected was true. Clark wasn't just facing tough competition, she was being deliberately used in other people's narratives.
And then Caitlin Clark kind of getting brought into that, Caitlin Clark responding to it. What has been your overall assessment of that dialogue and as it relates to your star player?
Yeah, I mean, I hate it all for Caitlin. I feel like, she's a 23-year-old kid who loves to play this game, who is a pawn in a lot of other people's games and a lot of other people's narratives, and I hate that for her. We're coming into a time in the WNBA where we're kind of part of the growing pains of becoming quote unquote mainstream professional sport is some of this stuff.
But when White called Caitlin a pawn, she wasn't just talking about the media. Her comments were a thinly veiled message aimed at everyone profiting from the chaos, from rival players using Clark's name to air their own grievances, to league executives who see her as a cash cow instead of a person. Most of all, it was a shot at the one person at the very top who has stayed eerily silent through it all. White laid it bare. This wasn't an accident. It was a coordinated effort by multiple parties to leverage Clark's fame for their own gain, with no regard for the consequences.
I do think that we are at a pivotal moment in terms of the league's history. And look, I was a part of the very first collective bargaining agreement of the WNBA, where we wanted insurance all year long, to now where it is growing and players do deserve more. And leadership needs to reflect where we are as a league, and also understand where we are as a league and where players' perspectives are coming from. And we have coaches on the sidelines, and Becky Hammond and myself, and of course Noelle Quinn, who was in Seattle, who played in this league.
Behind the record ratings and sold-out arenas, the WNBA is a league at war with itself. On the surface, it's celebrating unprecedented growth, all thanks to Caitlin Clark. But underneath, a bitter jealousy is festering. Clark has been physically targeted on the court and criticized off it, seemingly punished for the very attention that is saving the league. Stephanie White just became the first person with real power to publicly acknowledge this ugly civil war. She confirmed that the smiles for the camera are fake, and behind the scenes, a battle for control and respect is raging. This isn't just rookie treatment, it's a new level of hostility. The ugly truth of veteran hazing has been exposed like never before. While every rookie gets tested, the attacks on Caitlin Clark have felt different, more personal, more dangerous. We've seen the cheap shot from Chennedy Carter, the shoulder check from Angel Reese, and countless uncalled fouls that have left fans furious. It's a targeted campaign disguised as welcome to the league physicality. What White's comments imply is that this isn't just competition, it's a deliberate attempt by some veterans to gatekeep their league and put the newcomer in her place. White's most cutting remark was aimed directly at the top. When she said the league needs leadership that reflects where we are now, everyone knew who she meant: Commissioner Kathy Engelbert. Engelbert's hands-off approach has been a disaster. While Clark was getting hip-checked and trashed in the press, the commissioner offered nothing but generic corporate statements, allowing the narrative to spiral out of control. White's words were a direct challenge to her authority, a public vote of no confidence in the person whose job it is to protect the integrity of the game and its players. What likely pushed White to speak out was a shocking private conversation that another WNBA star, Nafisa Collier, recently exposed. Collier revealed on her podcast that Engelbert told her Caitlin Clark should be grateful she makes $16 million off the court. This comment suggested a stunning lack of empathy from the commissioner, basically telling players to ignore the on-court abuse because Clark is rich. It was the final straw for many, a sign that the league's leadership is completely out of touch with the reality its players are facing. You can be sure Stephanie White heard that and decided enough was enough. And let's not forget the media machine pouring gasoline on this fire. Outlets that ignored the WNBA for years are now creating daily debate segments around Caitlin Clark, manufacturing rivalries and twisting every quote for maximum clicks. They've turned her into a content farm, framing her as either a savior or a villain depending on what will generate more outrage. White's pawn comment was a direct shot at this cynical media strategy, which profits from the division it helps create, turning legitimate discussions about the league's growth into a toxic circus. Ultimately, this all comes down to one thing: money. Caitlin Clark's arrival triggered a financial earthquake in the WNBA. Ticket prices have skyrocketed, viewership has shattered records, and endorsement money is flooding in. But that wealth isn't being distributed evenly, and the spotlight shines almost exclusively on her. This has created a deep-seated resentment among players who have been grinding in the league for years with little recognition or reward. White understands this tension better than anyone, and her interview was a plea to stop blaming the player and start fixing the system that created this financial disparity in the first place. Because of all this, Caitlin Clark walked into the league to play basketball, but was immediately turned into a symbol for everyone's personal battles. To some, she represented a pay gap problem. To others, she was a symbol of media favoritism. Her every move was twisted into a debate she never started. Stephanie White just called out this entire toxic process, stating that her player is just trying to hoop while everyone else is playing dirty political games with her career. She's being forced to carry the weight of every single issue in women's sports on her shoulders, an impossible burden for a 22-year-old rookie. What makes White's statement so powerful is the deafening silence from every other coach in the league. For months, not a single head coach dared to publicly criticize the officiating or the hostile environment Clark was facing. They stuck to safe, robotic answers about adjustments and learning curves. This widespread silence makes you wonder what kind of pressure the league office puts on its coaches to stay in line. White didn't just defend her player, she broke a code of silence that has protected the league's dysfunctional status quo for far too long. Make no mistake, this wasn't some calculated publicity stunt. This was the raw frustration of a coach who has had a front row seat to the abuse her player has endured all season. She's seen the cheap shots, heard the whispers, and watched the league do absolutely nothing. She saw the flagrant fouls, the media narratives twisting every word, and the weird tension consuming the league. When the people in charge failed to protect her star, Stephanie White decided to become Caitlin Clark's shield herself, and she did it in front of the entire world. That's why White's comment about connected teams being winning teams was so brilliant. While the Indiana Fever battled injuries and media storms, they stayed united. This was a subtle but clear jab at other more drama-filled super teams, whose locker rooms are reportedly plagued by ego and division. White was sending a message to the entire league: talent means nothing without culture, and right now, the WNBA's culture is broken. She subtly implied that while other teams are focused on drama, her team is focused on basketball. The moment the interview dropped, the fallout was immediate and intense. Fans erupted in support of White, hailing her as the only leader willing to speak the truth. Meanwhile, a few rival players started posting vague, defensive tweets about unity and not letting outsiders divide them, a clear sign that White's comments had hit a nerve. Even sports analysts who had been critical of Clark were suddenly forced to admit that her coach had a point, calling her comments honest and long overdue. With a single powerful interview, Stephanie White may have accidentally started a revolution. She exposed the commissioner's weakness and gave a voice to millions of fans who felt the league was betraying its biggest star. In a league desperate for strong leadership, a team coach has suddenly emerged with more authority and respect than the commissioner herself. This has created a major power shift right before our eyes, where the unofficial queen of the WNBA might just be a coach in Indiana. This whole situation sets a dangerous precedent for the future. If this is how the WNBA treats a generational talent who is single-handedly elevating the entire sport, what message does that send to the next superstar? It tells them the league is a shark tank, where success will be met with resentment, and the leadership will leave you to fend for yourself. If the WNBA doesn't fix this culture of jealousy in its leadership vacuum, the same new fans who rushed to support the league this year will walk away just as quickly. And through it all, Caitlin Clark has said nothing. She continues to just show up, play hard, and let her historic performance do the talking. Now her coach is fighting her battles for her, and the lines have been drawn. The war for the soul of the WNBA has officially begun, and it's being fought in public for everyone to see. The league can no longer hide its dirty laundry. So did Stephanie White just save the WNBA from itself, or did she just start a fire that could burn the whole thing down? Drop your thoughts below, hit that subscribe button because this story is far from over.